How do you handle uncomfortable situations? Do you sit there in silence, hoping the moment will pass? Do you laugh awkwardly, hoping the people will leave you alone? Or do you follow along, hoping that they don't listen to you? I know I've been in uncomfortable situations, and a lot of times I don't know what to do. But that's why today, together, we're going to learn how to handle those situations. In this episode of the Self Podcast, we will react to a TED Talk talking about how to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations. Also, she's going to give us a lot of tools on how to be better in those situations. Now, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Make sure you guys leave a like down below. And welcome to the Self Podcast. I'm your host, Discovery Day. Let's hop into the video.
For a line of dominoes to fall, one has to fall first, which then leaves the other choiceless to do the same. And that domino that falls, we're hoping that, okay, the next person that sees this is inspired to be a domino. Being the domino for me looks like speaking up and doing the things that are really difficult, especially when they're needed, with the hope that others will follow suit. And here's the thing. I'm the person who says what you might be thinking, but dare not to say. And a lot of times people think that we're fearless. The people who do this, we're fearless. We're not fearless. We're not unafraid of the consequences or the sacrifices that we have to make by speaking truth to power. What happens is we feel like we have to, because there are too few people in the world willing to be the domino, too few people willing to take that fall. We're not doing it without fear. Now let's talk about fear. I'm not going to let fear rule my life. I'm not going to let fear dictate what I do. And then all these awesome things started happening, and dominoes started to fall. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, 2015, I turned 30. It's going to be my year of do it anyway. Anything that scares me, I'm going to actively pursue it. So I'm a Capricorn. I like my feet solidly on the ground. I decided to take my first ever solo vacation, and it was out of the country to the Dominican Republic. So on my birthday, what did I do? I went ziplining through the forest of Punta Cana. And for some odd reason, I had on business casual. Don't ask why. And I had an incredible time. Also, I don't like being submerged in water. I like to be, again, on solid ground. So I went to Mexico and swam with dolphins underwater. And then the cool thing that I did also that year that was my mountain was I wrote my book, I'm Judging You, the Do Better Manual. And I had to own that whole writing thing now, right? Yes. But the very anti-me thing that I did that year that scared the crap out of me, I went skydiving. We're about to fall out the plane. I was like, I've done some stupid things in life. This is one of them. And then we come falling down to earth, and I literally lose my breath as I see Earth. And I was like, I just fell out of a perfectly good plane on purpose. What is wrong with me? But then I looked down at the beauty, and I was like, this is the best thing I could have done. This is an amazing decision. And I think about the times when I have to speak truth. It feels like I am falling out that plane. It feels like that moment when I'm at the edge of the plane, and I'm like, you shouldn't do this. But then I do it anyway, because I realize I have to. Sitting at the edge of that plane and kind of staying on that plane is comfort to me. And I feel like every day that I'm speaking truth against institutions and people who are bigger than me and just forces that are more powerful than me, I feel like I'm falling out of that plane. But I realize comfort is overrated, because being quiet is comfortable. Keeping things the way they've been is comfortable. And all comfort has done is maintain the status quo. So we've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable by speaking these hard truths when they're necessary.
I mean, first of all, let's snap for her on that one. Like, absolute bars right there. But yeah, like I said to you guys earlier, like a way that I originally was trying to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations was just being quiet. But then I realized, I'm like, oh, I'm still uncomfortable. I'm just not saying anything before, right? Like when I was younger, I would laugh awkwardly. I would just, honestly follow along with what everyone else was doing, hoping that, like, okay, like people are not gonna notice. Everyone's doing this thing, or everyone's saying this thing, or everyone's feeling the same way. So I'm gonna just agree with everybody else, just so I'm not the main focus of the conversation, or I'm not the one that's trying to create change in this moment, right? And then as I got older, I'm like, okay, I can't just follow along, or I can't just laugh awkwardly, because then people really think that's the way I feel, that's the way I think about that situation. So the thing that I started doing after that was being quiet, but I ultimately realized like, oh, like that uncomfortableness I'm feeling is not just because, maybe someone's saying something that I don't agree with, or it's not just that I don't like the certain person that I'm with right now. It's also I'm also uncomfortable because there's more that I want to say, or there's something I want to say that I'm holding back, right? And that's what that uncomfortable feeling is. The uncomfortable feeling isn't necessarily fear. It's honestly, it's more of, I guess you can say, it's like motivation for yourself to be like, yo, say what you really feel. Speak your mind, speak your truth, like she was saying, right? And I honestly didn't make that realization until I kind of started to face some of my fears, right? One of my fears is like kind of ruining friendships, right? Like I always wanted to be the person that's friendly to everybody. I never wanted to be the person that, people talk behind my back about, right? I don't want people saying shitty things about me when I'm not around. So I always just try to keep everything cool. But then I started to realize that I was lying to myself. I was lying to those people by agreeing with them or laughing along with the things that they were saying. And as I got older, and I got into like some couple mentor roles at my jobs and stuff, that I realized like, oh, like being that person isn't effective. It doesn't create change, and it doesn't make you a better person at all. You're just staying complacent, right? And that's what that uncomfortableness is. Like she was saying, like staying, it's not being uncomfortable, it's being comfortable, right? Like staying where you are, just living the status quo, like she was saying, of your life is like, that's comfortability. But being comfortable does not mean you're doing the right thing. And that's when I kind of made that realization, and made that change in my life. I was like, okay, now I'm going to speak up, And I've had some moments where I had to speak up against friends, I had to speak up at job, I had to speak up for other people, and at first when I was doing it, I felt uncomfortable, I was scared, I was, I felt like, I was gonna ruin friendships and all the things. But over time, I realized like, oh no, like not only did I learn and get better in these moments, but I created change, right? Whether I changed that person's mind or their perspective, or it changed our friendship for the better, right? I always assume that the worst is gonna happen on the other side of me speaking the truth, but in reality, it just made things better, right? And I think, we all just have to try things, right? I think that's the most important thing when it comes to life. Just try first, and learn along the way, right? Don't try something and the first time you try you fail, like give up. No, like the same thing. Like, yes, she did zip lining and some really bad. I don't who does zip lining in business casual. That was a crazy fit, but for you to, you know for her to first do zip lining, and do that and be like, okay, like I overcame that fear of heights. And then she was like, okay, but I'm also still feared of being submerged in water. Okay, let me go ahead and do that. And then I think she also probably realized like, okay, yes, I did, overcome my fear of heights, but I was completely in control and safe in that environment. Zip lining, right? I did zip lining while I went to Puerto Rico with my friends, and you're wearing a wire, there's a harness, there's people, guiding you across the thing. Like, there's a lot of safety nets to that. And obviously, again, she still overcame her fear of heights, but she didn't do it to the fullest capability, all right, or the fullest capacity. And then she went on, submerged herself in water, where the only safety net she had was the helmet, to help her breathe while she was underwater. But now, or afterwards, she decided, okay, let me skydive. Yes, she has a guy on her back that's be able to pull the strings, and they have the parachute and all the things. But she literally just had to jump and let go and just kind of live in that moment, and that helped her get better with not only facing her fears, but being more comfortable in those uncomfortable situations, and being able to speak up and speak her truth in these moments. And I think that's incredibly inspiring. So yeah, like, let's keep going, man, because she got there's more bars coming. I hope y'all know it. She be let's hop back in.
And for me, though, I realized that I have to speak these truths because honesty is so important to me. My integrity is something I hold dear. Justice, I don't think justice should be an option. We should always have justice. Also, I believe in shea butter as a core value. And, and I think the world would be better if we were all more moisturized. But besides that, with these as my core values, I have to speak the truth. I have no other choice in the matter. But then people like me, the professional troublemakers, should not be the only ones who are committed to being these dominoes who are always falling out the planes or being the first one to take this hit. People are so afraid of these acute consequences, not realizing that there are many times when we walk in rooms and we are some of the most powerful people in those rooms. We might be the second most powerful, third most powerful. And I firmly believe that our job in those times is to disrupt what is happening. And then if we're not the most powerful, if two more of us band together, it makes us powerful. It's like co-signing the woman in the meeting, the woman who can't seem to get her word out, or just making sure that other person who can't make a point is being heard. Our job is to make sure they have room for that. Everyone's well-being is community business. If we made that a point, we'd understand that for the times when we need help, we wouldn't have to look around so hard if we made sure we were somebody else's help. And there are times when I feel like I have taken very public tumbles and falls. Like a time when I was asked to speak at a conference, and they wanted me to pay my way there. And then I did some research and found out the white men who spoke there got compensated and got their travel paid for. The white women who spoke there got their travel paid for. The black women who spoke there were expected to actually pay to speak there. And I was like, what do I do? And I knew that if I spoke up about this publicly, I could face financial loss. But then I also understood that my silence serves no one. So I fearfully spoke up about it publicly, and other women started coming out to talk about, I too have faced this type of pay inequality. And it started a conversation about discriminatory pay practices that this conference was participating in. I felt like I was the domino the time I read a disturbing memoir by a public figure and wrote a piece about it. And I knew this person was more powerful than me and could impact my career. But I was like, I gotta do this. I gotta sit at the edge of this plane, maybe for 2 hours. And I did. And I pressed publish and I ran away. And I came back to a viral post and people being like, oh my God, I'm so glad somebody finally said this. And it started a conversation about mental health and self-care. And I was like, okay, all right, this thing that I'm doing, I guess, all right, it's doing something. And then so many people have been the domino when they talk about how they've been assaulted by powerful men. And it's made millions of women join in and say, me too. So shout out to Tarana Burke for igniting that movement. People and systems count on our silence to keep us exactly where we are. Now, being the domino sometimes comes down to being exactly who you are. So I've been a shady somebody since I was 3. This is me on my 3rd birthday. But I've been this girl all my life. And I feel like even that's been the domino, because in a world that wants us to walk around as representatives of ourselves, being yourself can be a revolutionary act. And in a world that wants us to whisper, I choose to yell. When it's time to say these hard things, I ask myself 3 things. 1, did you mean it? 2, can you defend it? 3, did you say it with love? If the answer is yes to all 3, I say it and let the chips fall. That's important. That checkpoint with myself always tells me, yes, you're supposed to do this. Telling the truth, telling thoughtful truth should not be a revolutionary act. Speaking truth to power should not be sacrificial, but they are. But I think if more of us chose to do this for the greater good, we'd be in better spaces than we are right now. Speaking of the greater good, I think we commit ourselves to telling truths to build bridges to common ground. And bridges that aren't based on truth will collapse. So it is our job, it is our obligation, it is our duty to speak truth to power, to be the domino. Not just when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Thank you.
So to start this video, I asked you guys, how do we become comfortable in uncomfortable situations? And I think she gave us 3 brilliant tools to help us all become comfortable in these situations. I would say number 1 is facing the fear itself. I think if you just embrace what's going on, embrace the feeling that you have it within, just let it be, right? Now, before you go in and you're like, you know what, I've been having this one boss that's been pissing me off, and I've wanted to say this one thing to them because they've been so disrespectful, not only to me but to my other fellow employees. No, before you go into that point, think about the other things that you said. Are you saying it with love? Do you mean what you're saying? And is this the truth that you want to have out? And I think those three things are even more important than even just facing the fear, right? Because sometimes I think we all been in moments where we've been uncomfortable and we just let this rage out. But then the words or the thing that we were trying to get across to the person doesn't hit because it came out with anger. If it comes out with love, if it's kind, and you truly mean what you're saying, I think not only will it make it better for the conversation or make the moment, easier for the both of you, but the communication will be easier. The person will likely be more sympathetic or empathetic to what you're saying. I think the person will then listen more, right? Instead of if you're just sitting there yelling the whole entire time, is someone going to listen to you? Probably not. But if you're speaking kindly and you're really trying to get these words out and you mean what you're saying, then it's going to communicate and get to the person that you want to get to. I think a third thing, that's the most important thing, is being the domino, right? Like the domino moment. Now, like she said, and I'll mention my own story of my own domino moment, but sometimes it's just you being the first person to address the thing, or be the first person to speak up, or to be the first person to go through the moment to help others go through it, right? Like you said, like with the example of a domino, once one domino falls, the rest have no choice but to fall afterwards. And I'll speak from my own story. I was working at a job, and we had his new boss, and me and him, like, we were cool before he became the boss, but over time in that new leadership role he started to change. And me and him had several conversations where I was like trying to give him tips, or like, hey man, maybe you should be talking to people like this, hey man, you shouldn't be doing that, blah blah blah. And it just didn't, my communication skills at the time was probably poor, but also like he just wasn't in a place to listen. And then afterwards, I had a real serious conversation with him after I sat there over a week, and I really sat there and really thought about everything I was saying, and I meant every word that I said to him. And then he acknowledged not only my feelings in the moment, but he acknowledged the things that he did wrong, and it helped him to a degree to change who he was at the workspace. But it didn't last long because he himself wasn't ready to make that change. And what ultimately end up being the real dominant moment is when I decided just to leave the job, right? Like at the end of the conversation me and him had, I kind of got to the conclusion that, like, hey, maybe it's best for me to go, right? Like if I don't want to be the person that's constantly telling you what to do, because you're technically my boss now, right? I don't want to be doing that to you, and I also don't want to constantly make you feel like I'm just here criticizing you. So I think it's better not only for me to grow as a person, but for you to grow as a boss. It's better for me to leave. And after I left, you know, the domino didn't go in the favor of him, but it went in favor to other employees, right? Other employees started to ask me, like, why'd you leave? What was going on? Like, what were the conversations you had with this person? And when I really shared my story and shared my experience with him and shared the conversations I had with him, a lot of them kind of made a similar realization of, like, oh yeah, like maybe he's not the best boss, maybe he's not talking to me the way that he should be. And they all went on. A couple of people did leave, but they went on to, unfortunately, went on to report him, and now he's no longer there. And to me, it's upsetting to hear that he got, it got to that point where he had to get reported, but it showed me that, like, oh, okay, like being the first person to stand up, being the first person, to acknowledge this thing. Yes, I mean, I might not see, the positive side of it, or I might not see, the repercussions of me having this conversation with him, but maybe this can inspire others to have this conversation. Maybe this inspires others to stand up for themselves. And ultimately it did, right? A lot of people are now feeling a lot more comfortable in that job space. I'm in a situation at a job where I feel comfortable. I now know what type of people I want to work with, right? I know how to communicate these feelings in a workspace now, right? And I think that's just my dominant moment in that sense. So I'm gonna leave you guys with one last question of what is your dominant moment, right? What is the thing that you always wanted to change? And it doesn't have to be a workplace thing. This could be a relationship with your family. It could be a friendship, even a relationship with your partner. This could even be something as simple as just something that you want to change about yourself in your life. You feel like you've been holding up this thing of yourself, right? Let's say you want to be comfortable in all types of situations, right? I'm somebody that doesn't really like small talk, and again, similar to me being silent in uncomfortable situations, when I'm in awkward small talk conversations, I should just stay quiet. Maybe that's something you want to change about yourself, right? I've recently started asking other people's questions just so I still don't have to respond and don't have to engage in the small talk. And again, I am still growing as a person, but maybe that could be your thing. Maybe the domino you want to follow is, okay, let me go from being, giving the fake or the vague answer of like, oh, I'm good. Maybe you want to change it to, okay, now I want to share what's really going on in my life. Or instead of, feeling forced or feeling like you have to answer the, what's going on, how are you doing questions, maybe you can now ask them that question first, right? Maybe you were too shy to ask people those questions. Whatever your domino moment is, just comment down below. You can even DM me personally on Instagram. But I really want to see us all change for the better. I want us to all feel comfortable in these uncomfortable situations, whether it's for yourself or for someone else, because I think all these things matter. Like the domino, man, once one domino falls, they all have no choice but to fall. Now, again, the first domino is not going to see the last domino fall, but eventually that last one will fall, and it wouldn't have happened if that first one didn't fall first. So just always try to look at those moments, those situations as that I could be, or I am the first domino to fall to create change in someone's life. And I think if we all do that together, the world not only could be in a better place, but we could all be comfortable in the situations we don't feel comfortable being in. I'm your host, Discovery Day. This is the Self Podcast. I hope you guys all enjoyed this episode and this reaction. I'll see you guys on the next one for sure. But before I go, again, leave a like down below, comment down below. I really want to hear you guys' answers to all of these questions. Whether you share your domino moment or you just share about how you handle uncomfortable situations. And yeah, make sure you guys subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Deuces.